Thank you for sending it to me and for signing it. That was awesome. I loved it. Yeah, I was so excited to read it because I know when we talked before, like a lot of the things that you see in people is very similar to like things that I see in people, but there aren't words to describe it. So I was like reading through this book and I was like, damn, Tevi nailed it. Tevi like did it. The approach that it comes to, like, because you're talking about hard stuff that's hard to understand. But the people who need to hear it, it's broken down in such a way that it's digestible. And like I mentioned before, I love the fact that you're a man. Because the way you break it down, it's not about feelings and emotions and oh, what's your trauma response? And oh, it's not all touchy-feely. It is a self-analysis. It's a practical guide. It's a guide. Here it is what it is. Here's why it's happening. And it's not a question of do you have it? It's what is yours? Like that
Exactly.
insight piece of what is yours? How are you? Because this is how the human body, right? Like if it was a machine, this is how the machine functions. This is how it's set up. I love your reference to the power plant and like the safety mechanisms and the race car, right? Like
Nice,
these
nice,
are
nice.
so true. And they're like expressed in a way where I feel like men will get it. Like women can preach at them all day and it's just words, right? But the way you break it down and like set it up, it's like a blueprint of how all these things are moving together. And then also how like with the race car, you're like, but if you can take a pit stop and get someone else to
Yes,
help put the airbags back in, right? Like, so you're not going for help. You're needing a different service. You're needing something to be
yes,
serviced to get this out of your way so you can see clearly again. Oh, I have
yes.
goosebumps. I have goosebumps.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you for taking on this task and writing it. Yeah, and the way you lay it out, um, it's a journey, right? Like you walk people through it. So the beginning, it's a lot of explaining and breaking down, and it's like all of the pieces. So I felt like if I went to IKEA, right? If this book was IKEA,
Yes.
you purchase it, the first thing you do is you take out the pictures. And it's like, do you have four bolts? Here's what a bolt is. Here's what the nuts are. Here's the tool, right? Like it breaks down and makes sure that you have all of the pieces. And then as you
Yeah,
go through the book, it takes all of those pieces and puts them together in ways of how they work together. And then at the end,
yes.
when you get to the final product, it's like, here's how things are happening. Here's where things go astray. Here's what to look for. This is what you're needing. This is what you don't understand. This is where out here they call them pukas. This is where the puka is in your relationship. This is the hole, right? The hole in your existence, what you're looking for, why you don't understand it. It's like all put together.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you. Man, when I was putting the chapters together, you know, just like you said, I didn't want to just go at it and start feeding you a bunch of theories, right? I wanted to really break it down because I knew certain people will get to a certain point, it just won't resonate and they might give up, right? But then for people who get it or actually have enough interest in it to keep going, I wanted to give them all the pieces. So in the end, because that's the whole point, it's a practical guide. So ultimately, you have to be able to put your own pieces together, right? So if you don't understand the different categories of elements that we're working with, then it's like, again, it's going to be a bunch of theoretical stuff and maybe it works for you and maybe it doesn't. But what I tried to do is, like you said it so elegantly, was that I wanted, if you care enough to know, you get to identify the different components. And in the end, then you will know how to put the pieces together and the instructions and, the ins and outs of it, looking at it from different perspectives. So I'm truly grateful that somehow you get it. Like you get exactly my vision and how I layered the book so that in the end you get a full picture and you can go back and start putting take the pieces apart and put it back together and see how it works for you specifically.
And even as you just described it, I totally got that feeling with this book. like when you get into the theoretical perspective, everything's in a box. This is this theory.
Yes.
And, historically, from a scientific perspective, you had to come from a box because otherwise they would just rip your stuff apart, right? Because, well, my theory says this and it's not supported by that. So like scientifically, the evidence, right? Everything got like really put into a condensed box of this is this theory. This is,
Yes.
we're not talking about that, we're talking about this. And I thought that the way, you use the example of the Amazon River that looked like a lake, but there is a current, right?
Yes.
Even though this isn't what that analogy was used for in the book, which I loved that analogy, amazing, amazing. But I felt like you took all of these theoretical boxes and you just
Yes.
opened the door on the cage for all of them so that they could just flow and interweave however people are needing to connect them.
Yes, that was my intention. That was my
Nailed it.
intention. Thank you. Yes, because I knew just like from the beginning, I tried to make it clear to people. I'm not trying to redefine the dictionary about any of those things. You might have learned different things, and I'm not dismissing anything. I'm not disputing anyone's beliefs. You might have learned words, ideas, theories, different concepts that you have your own opinion about. And some of those opinions might be quite strong because we have whole belief systems built around those definitions that we give ourselves. So from the beginning, I wanted to make it clear I'm not trying to dissociate anyone from whatever they used to believe. I'm just giving you a blueprint of how you can trace your own steps and get to the bottom of who you are as a person. Okay. I have to use words because it has to be explained somehow. So the words that I use and the expressions and the terms that I used, I had to be very careful, how to use those words like the ego, the inner self, the higher self, and all that stuff. It's like the moment you mention those words, people already have preconceived ideas about them. So
Mhm.
just to be able to paint a picture without making it anti or pro anything.
Right,
That
right.
alone to me, it was like, okay, I need to really think about this. So I took days just thinking about how to present it. It wasn't just about the information, it was about how to present the information so that it's as neutral as possible. It's just what it is, it's information. It's not meant to challenge anybody's belief system. It's simply information that you can use however you choose.
Yeah. Like, the people, you just hit the nail on the head, right? It simply is.
Yes.
And I feel like took this big, especially from a male's perspective, right? Like women are supposed to be the emotional ones that talk about all this stuff. Men are very scientific, logical minds. And you took all of these complex things because they are complex. Not one thing you talked about is linear or like, its own thing. Like you took all these complex concepts and simplified them as it just is. And that is
Yeah.
not an easy task.
Yeah.
Another thing that was interesting, like at first when I got it, I was like the proxy diet. When you told me the proxy diet, I was like, I don't even know what the hell that means. Like that doesn't make any sense to me. And then as I got to the end where it talks about the proxy and like, A proxy and B proxy, it was like, oh my God, mind blown. Like you put it in such a way, right? Like it's just a different perspective that people aren't looking through, right? But like that perspective of what part of me am I choosing to show people?
Yes.
And that's where people get lost, right? We're choosing to show people because that's how we save face, but we have no idea that this is a proxy of us that we have because of all of these things that have happened that you point out, right? This is
Yes.
how these proxies come in. And when you're like A proxy, B proxy, yeah, it's like it got so bright in this room, like the aha moment. Like, and then I was like, I love the title.
Nice.
I love it.
Nice.
And then the
Nice.
end ties it all together on how to have the proxy diet.
Okay, we should do it simultaneously. There you go.
Oh,